one thing I will like readily admit now as a Mercury in the eighth house person is that, I did a lot of things in the dark, in secret. For years I practiced astrology privately. I didn't tell many people for a very long time, because astrology, well, I grew up in a very, Roman Catholic family, and I have a very conventional day job, as a primary school teacher. And in a school with a Catholic ethos, I might add. And I, astrology wasn't something that was open.
Sorry not to cut you off, but I grew up Catholic as
Oh
well.
yeah,
I think it's different in Canada. I don't know if you guys still have nuns and stuff, but I don't know,
still have.
Catholic
Excuse
is
me,
what it
still
is.
have.
Oh, I don't know if you guys still have nuns,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know it's super like old school.
There would still
Huh?
be some nuns, yeah, for sure. And there were
Okay.
people. I have an uncle who is a priest as well. And I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't consider myself agnostic. I would still consider myself spiritual, and that I believe in a higher power. But I've definitely, have expanded, my philosophy and my belief in, I wouldn't adhere to all of the dogmatism anymore. But uh, I definitely did astrology in secret, for many, many years. And I would tell some people about it. Some people were like, oh, that's so cool. But a lot of people, I didn't share it openly, which is quite typical, I learned, of people with Mercury in the eighth house. We do things in the dark, we do things, we don't like other people to see us doing them. Like we're doing our little investigative work, we're learning things. And actually, we kind of, ironically, we do our best work in the dark. We're not really meant to be seen, to a certain point. So like I definitely would say, people often say to me, oh, when did you find astrology? Like I just found it last year. And they're surprised to learn that I've been studying it myself for over a decade, but it took me a long time to actually go and take formal training. It took me a long time to put myself out there, because Mercury in the eighth house does not, that's a Mercury that doesn't like to be seen. you know this is a dark house. But this house can definitely, when you've got your Mercury here, I was found that other people would come to me with their birth charts. Nobody who comes to you for a birth chart reading comes without problems, or without some level of maybe trauma, or even past life issues, or some struggle. I've yet to see a birth chart that didn't have something difficult in it. I've never come across a birth chart and was like, oh, this birth chart is so easy. There's always some struggle. And I definitely would say that some charts are harder than others. But Mercury in the eighth house allows you to go very, very deep into a chart. And what I noticed when I started doing it professionally, clients, I would always ask for feedback. Even if it wasn't positive, I wanted to know. I was like, give me your honest feedback, because I want to get better at this. And a lot of them said to me, I've had my chart read before, but no one's ever read it as deeply as you. And I was like, okay, so Mercury in the eighth house can go deeper. So this is one of my strengths. And then I remember I read a celebrity birth chart. It was Lewis Capaldi's, actually. And I didn't believe I went that deeply. I just read it on Instagram, and I hadn't prepped it, just read it on my stories behind me. And another astrologer messaged me and said, I think it's unethical to look at his chart that deeply. And I was quite shocked. She was like, it's amazing, don't get me wrong, but you went so deep. Because I actually, there was, I guess, a lack of self awareness. It's very hard for us to see ourselves, Mercury in the eighth house, until other people shine a light on your Mercury. And someone to say, by the way, you read charts deeper than other people. And is it ethical to read them that deeply? My reply was, look, his life is in the public domain. He is going through some stuff. I read his chart because my followers approached me to read it. But afterwards, that feedback, even though initially it did kind of upset me a bit, I went, there's something there in that feedback for me. There's a lesson in that, I take for granted that I read charts the same as everyone else. Well, actually, no. If you have Mercury in the eighth house, you're going to go so deep, you might make other people uncomfortable. Even other astrologers, your contemporaries might be like, whoa, whoa, what's she doing? She's going way too deep, or she's going off script. And that was what I was doing. I was going off script. I was not just taking my basic astrology studies. I was taking my decade of practicing astrology privately and reading charts in the dark, coming up with my own systems, my own patterns, my own unique way of reading the chart, because I do have Mercury in Leo. So I was like showcasing, look, this is what I'm doing. And I was flipping between different house systems, degree theory, traditional astrology, modern astrology, asteroids, fixed stars, and going very, very deep in an almost invasive way into a man's chart who I had no permission to read. I didn't have any permission to read Lewis Capaldi's chart, but I was doing it for the purpose of teaching and sharing astrology because I'm so passionate about it. But I guess my point is that I'm kind of repeating now at this point was that I lacked awareness about the depth with which I was reading charts until that astrologer kindly pointed it out to me, that I was going a bit deeper than maybe other astrologers were comfortable going. And I guess it's something now I practice discernment around. I don't see it as good or bad. I just have an awareness now because other people have told me. Your Mercury's going a bit too deep into the underworld. It's making us all uncomfortable.
Wow, that's quite a challenging thing, isn't it? Yeah, so you have Mercury in Leo. That's interesting too, Mercury in Leo. Because luminary, being in the 8th house, like as you were saying, other people shine a light onto that house. It's like you yourself are shining a light onto and I guess it's like synastry and composite charts. Every person that you're meeting, who you're shining a light into their 8th house. But that's a powerhouse sort of aspect, what you've got going on specifically, because you have that ability to I guess act as a what's this word, a catalyst for change for other people, but internal change in their own awareness about what they're doing, why they're doing it, what they're seeing, what they're feeling internally that other people don't see. I mean, it's powerful.
Yeah, it is for sure. It's powerful, and I think when I first read charts, Ruby, I took it for granted. I just thought I was, I of course, when you start anything, you have feelings of inadequacy, and you assume that you're seeing these things, and you're assuming that maybe 10% of them aren't hitting the base, or you're missing, or you're way off the mark. You're never going to be assuming you get everything right as an astrologer, but afterwards, sometimes I would have people contact me and say, I couldn't give you feedback after the reading for so long because I was speechless, because you told me stuff that I told that nobody knew, or you told me stuff about my childhood. You went so deep into my past, because I would be very, I love to go in really deep and find out, okay, I'm going to pull out like the deepest, darkest thing out of this chart for the purpose of maybe like showing this person that this is why you behave this way, and this is what happened. And or even I love to look at it must be an 8th house thing, Ruby. I love to look at the sun and moon aspects in the birth chart and tell the client, okay, like your mom and dad, when you were born or when you were conceived, they were on the same page. They loved each other so much. Or whether they're together now or not, you were conceived from a place of so much love. And then sometimes you will see in a chart that maybe the sun is squaring the moon exact, and you'll say, okay, when you were born, your mom and dad were not on the same page. They were going through something. They were going through something that wasn't easy, and it's no reflection of how much they loved you, but that struggle that they were going through is reflected in your birth chart. There's a struggle in you between who you are and how you feel. The sun and moon are squaring, and things like that. Because I myself, I have my sun and my moon in a square. My mom and dad were going through a lot of stress. They're still together when I was born, but that stress and that tension is still in me. And it's very emotional for people to revisit that, to revisit, their ancestry, their lineage, And then they'll often do a bit of investigative work afterwards. Like I remember there was one girl I read for, she had Pluto opposite her moon, and I just said to her, what was the labor like for your mom? She was under so much pressure. What happened? What happened? I was really intrigued. I could see like a really difficult birth. And it transpired that they had to use the vacuum, and they had to pull her out. And it was quite traumatic for the mother. Um, and she had Pluto opposite her moon exact. So her mom was under so much pressure. Birth was quite traumatic. Um, but that trauma is in you then, for the rest of your life. That Pluto opposite your moon is a difficult aspect to have natally. It is your natal promise, and it's something that you're learning to integrate. This, how you were born, how you entered this world, when you took your first breath. I'm so obsessed is the word I would use with Mercury in the eighth house. I'm so obsessed with how that shapes the way you navigate the world.